So that please use the chat feature, and I'm going to keep watching the chat feature, and I'll try to answer any questions that I can as they come up, because once I turn this over, I'll be quiet. This event usually takes place in person in the home during our spring lecture series, but the pandemic, of course, had other plans for us. And since March, the home has been closed to tours and events. And before we make the decision to reopen the home, we're going to keep monitoring Savannah and the state's evolving response, and we'll continue to pursue a course of safety while we continue to experience sort of the widespread community spread. And once we start seeing some real signs of improvement, we'll start doing scheduled tours and things like that to get the home back open. But even though the home isn't open, it doesn't actually minimize our needs to continue to support the home's mission. And we can always use financial support. So if you want to make a tax deductible donation, if you're not a friend of Flannery, that's a wonderful way of really supporting the organization. I think it's a $50 for a family, and you get early notice of all the events. You get early notice and invitations to special events. And I'm sure, I assure you, it puts you in some fun and creative company. You can sponsor one of our authors that comes in for a lecture series or a field trip for school children, or you can consider the home as part of your company's and annual giving, or as part of our personal estate planning. It's really the support of people like you who are what keeps the Flannery O'Connor Childhood Home a really vital part of this community's literary life. And part of that life is serving as a meeting place of this creative writing group, the Peacock Guild. So today we are led, our MC for the event is the Reverend Dr. Jeff Garrison. And we have 8 members of the Peacock Guild who will be reading from their original work. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to you, Jeff, and let you take it away.
Yeah, and I don't know how I got into this role, except for the fact that I was one that had the professional Zoom account available from my work. So that's kind of how I got into this. So our first
Did you get
reader.
voluntold?
Do what?
Did you get voluntold?
I think so, yes. Well, our first reader, Ariel Felton, will be reading. She wears a number of writer hats: a journalist, an editor, a humor writer, an essayist. And her writing has been published in the New Yorker, the Progressive, the Washington Post, the Bitter Southerner, McSweeney's, Scallywag Magazine, the Savannah Magazine, and the Savannah Morning News. And today she's reading a short humor piece titled "Things You're Learning About White People When You're Their Only Black Friend," which was recently published in McSweeney's. So Ariel.
Thank you, Jeff. So yes, this piece was published pretty recently. It was just a funny take on sort of like the questions I was getting or the text messages I was getting from my white friends in this very tense, time in our country. I think it came out of a little bit of frustration, but it felt really good to write it. So in all humor, this is just a listicle. It'll be very short. And like Jeff said, it's called "Things You're Learning About White People When You're Their Only Black Friend." Number 1, white people are freaking out right now. Number 2, like really freaking out. Number 3, white people know 2 Dr. King quotes max, and one of them is "violence multiplies violence." Number 4, white people don't know any Malcolm X quotes. Number 5, white people have a lot of pictures of black and white fists just stored in their phones. Number 6, like maybe too many. Number 7, white people have no idea when to capitalize the B in black. Number 8, white people all have an uncle named John that said something too racist to repeat last Thanksgiving, but they absolutely walked outside and absolutely refused to listen. Number 9, and it's an uncle by marriage, so it doesn't even really count. And number 10, unfortunately, white people have not been paying attention. Thanks. That's the end.
Thank you, Ariel.
Thanks.
Whoops. Are you frozen, Jeff?
Jeff, I think you're frozen. All right.
Oh,
Well, the next,
He must
Oh,
have
Jeffrey.
also.
whoops, what just happened?
Jeff is frozen.
Okay, let me see something. I'm gonna look at something real quick. He's having some bad weather. The next person is Barry. Barry, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you're about to read?
okay. You're right. I am Barry. I generally commute to the Flannery home from Hilton Head, but this is a lot easier. And I've actually had 2 stints with Peacock Guild and the Flannery home. I worked exclusively on poetry several years ago, developed a poetry manuscript, and that's finished. And I'm glad to announce to everyone, if you're interested in some good news, that the manuscript has been accepted and will be published. It's coming out in April. It's called Maybe Today. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And the Peacock Guild helped me a lot with developing that. And then I came back recently. I'm working on a collection of very short memoirs. That manuscript is also now finished, but I'm testing a lot of them out at the Flannery meetings, at the Peacock meetings. And I was told that publishing memoir is an extra challenge if you're not famous. Thus the title, Barry Who? 33 unforgettable micro memoirs from someone you never heard of. And I'm going to read one from each of my 2 Peacock stints today. I'm going to start with the memoir. Beverly is going to recognize this one. Okay. They're unrelated incidents from my life, and they all come with a date. December 21st, 1964. The Freudian slip of Freudian slips. We were big shots. College freshmen home for their first Christmas break. The girls, they loved us. We carried tales of adventure, mostly made up, from Penn State and Yale and Temple and Pitt, even far off exotic places like Michigan. I was especially delighted to see Linda Rose, a high school senior in this northern Pennsylvania town, pay a lot of attention to me. We'd always hung out in the same crowd. She was very friendly, even I thought slightly interested. But I never had the nerve to pursue that. I only knew Linda Rose was gorgeous, astonishing red hair, Paul Newman level blue eyes, a far, and I mean far better figure than Paul Newman could ever have. And what I considered the highlight, or should I say highlights, of Linda Rose, the most beautiful dimples in North America. When she smiled, oh my God. We were all loitering at the community center one day when Linda approached. I said hello to those dimples. Then, quite the surprise. So, she asked, how would you like to come over to the house for dinner one night? Had I been able to speak, I would have immediately said yes. Instead, I stumbled through, me? House? Your house? Yes, my house. The house where you live? Yes, Barry, I do live in my house. Finally, I recovered enough to reply. I would absolutely love to. This was a house, worthy in every detail, chandeliers downward, of Dr. Rose, her dermatologist, real estate mogul, big deal in the community father. I was careful to introduce myself properly to the entire family. How do you do? Very nice to meet you. What a lovely house you have. I presented her mother with a box of the most expensive custard-filled chocolate desserts I could find. Thank you, you shouldn't have. Oh no, ma'am, really, it's my pleasure. When I shook her father's hand, I could feel the scrutiny. At the table he really started in. So what are you studying, young man? Have you decided on a major yet? I don't believe I know your parents. What does your father do? Why did you choose Temple? Did you apply to Penn? That's where I went to med school, you know, Penn. Do you plan on staying in the area after graduation? I swore any minute the guy would say, so, what are your intentions regarding my daughter? There was a lot of please pass this and please pass that. Thank you, oh, this is so delicious, etc. Then, about halfway through the entree, someone, probably not her father, said something slightly amusing. I glanced toward Linda to catch her smile. And yes, there they were, those dimples. I turned to her mother. Mrs. Rose, I said, your daughter has the most amazing nipples. Who would have thought the most painful part of college would turn out to be Christmas break? Thank you.
I love that. That's so funny.
Thank you. And one poem from back in the days when I worked on the poetry. I chose the year 1945 because of the alliteration, 45. The actual year I was born was 19... Barry Dixon, 1945, dash. The instant you are born, you get a dash. A reminder the day life begins, that one day it will end. Guaranteed. Joe Jones, 1966, dash. Jennifer Kristen Rabinowitz, 2020, dash. Somewhere in a county seat, a very willing clerk sits ready to write a year to the right of your dash. Michael Jackson, 1958, dash, 2009. You cannot have your dash removed. There are no dashectomies. You cannot get rid of your dash by living a good life. Sorry. One man does not have a bigger dash than another man. Rich people cannot cheat death by buying more dashes. Bill Gates' dash is identical to the dash of the bag lady you passed on your way to work this morning. Nothing personal, but your dash is worthless. You cannot sell it for 1 penny or auction it on eBay. Are you a Christian? You cannot be saved from the dash. A Jew? 5,800 years of history have not removed one single dash. A Muslim? All the passion and intensity on earth will never delete your dash. A Buddhist? You have gained great wisdom. Guess what? You still have a dash. So as long as there is an empty space to the right of your dash, enjoy, live, love, learn, and be nice to that other guy. Because no matter who he is or what he's done, no matter who you are or who you think you are, I can assure you with absolute certainty that you both have a dash and a very willing county clerk. Thank you.
All right, looks
Thank
like
you,
Jeff
Barry.
this.
I hope you finished your introduction, and I am sorry. We're having I'm up in the mountains in Virginia, and there's a big thunderstorm here, and there was a big a lightning bolt that hit not long before I disappeared.
Well,
and lost.
I
At
could
least
be
it didn't
the
hit
first
you.
person ever introduced after they read.
Oh, okay. I don't remember where I was at, but
No, it's
something
okay.
about Hearst Poetry Prize and the Pushcart special mention and the Pushcart Prize and all kinds of things. But
Okay.
you heard him, and he's great, and he's very funny. So thank you for reading.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. I'll see if I can get through the next one without being knocked offline again. We have up next is Beverly Willett, author of Disassembly Required, Her 2019 memoir about starting over, I highly recommend it. It's a good book. A former lawyer, she writes personal essays and op-eds for national publications, including the USA Today, New York Times, AARP Magazine. They let people write before of age, and others. She's also a member of the board of the Flannery O'Connor Childhood Home Foundation. Her selection today comes from her book of personal essays in progress titled Return Engagements. Beverly.
Thank you, Jeff. And I think this might have been one that I workshopped through the Peacock Guild. So I have a section in this book in progress, essays in progress, about songs that have caused me pain over my life and how I kind of dealt with that. And this one is about the song Danny Boy. My father died in 1987. My mother passed away nearly 30 years later. She spent the years in between longing to join Daddy in heaven. Not that she had a death wish, she just missed my father. She never dated after he died either. Never had any desire to, she said. I've already had the best there is. What else could I possibly want? A man of few words, Dad had a heart full of love. He never yelled, cursed, or criticized. Never. He grumbled only once that I recall. While struggling to assemble a Christmas toy, he stamped his foot and said, "Doggone it." That was it. I was playing with a primitive tape recorder Santa had brought me and unintentionally recorded his tepid outburst. Dad's brief display of irritation was such an anomaly, the incident became a lifelong family joke. Want to hear it again? I'd ask family members, my hands poised on the recorder's play button. They always did. The image of my father I remember best is of him seated at the kitchen table, drinking his umpteenth cup of joe, deep in thought, and twirling the strand of brown hair that often tumbled down his forehead. I wish we could have shared the gourmet coffee revolution, but he died the same year Starbucks expanded beyond Seattle. He'd fill the percolator in the morning with Maxwell House and switch to instant in the afternoon. I haven't had coffee since your father died, my mother told me a few years after his death. I lost my taste for it. Each evening before turning in, the two repeated their daily ritual. They'd sit at the kitchen table, drink coffee, and smoke one last cigarette. Mom's revelation stunned me because I'd started drinking coffee right after Dad died, picking up where Mom left off. As coffee drinking alone became too painful for Mom, it became my way to maintain connection with him. Hearing his favorite song, the ballad, Danny Boy, consoled me at first, but the longer he was gone, the more painful hearing the song became. I never asked my father why he loved the song. Mom was the Irish one, Dad's ancestors were English. Except for church music, he mostly listened to old-time country like Eddie Arnold and Bob Wills. Written by English attorney and songwriter Frederick Weatherly in 1910, it was later set to the 17th century tune of Londonderry Air, becoming the unofficial Irish anthem. No one knows for certain what the lyrics mean. Its popularity has spanned the globe for more than 100 years, perhaps because people have so many ways of relating to it. One theory is that it's a song between lovers. Released just prior to World War I, the timing also suggests it was written for families whose sons were going off to war. In addition, the song has been tied to the homesickness of Irish immigrants who came to America in the early 1900s. And it's become known as a farewell song and is played regularly at funerals. The lyrics and melodic structure of the song, which continuously rise and fall, reinforce the song's sense of longing. After my father died, it became my own personal lament for him. It seemed I heard it more often than ever on the radio, at a concert, in pubs. After I got the call my father had a heart attack, I jumped on a plane, then drove to the emergency room where he was already in a coma. I held his hand and told him how much I loved him. Tears streamed from his eyes. He died a few hours later without regaining consciousness. When Mom passed away at the same hospital 29 years later, I didn't arrive in time to hold her hand. When I received the news, Danny Boy immediately played in my head, compounding my loss of them both. I listened more and more to the song and grew anxious to understand my father's connection with it. Mom's sister, who also knew him well, didn't know. I reread the letters my father wrote to me in college and found nothing in them to explain it either. But on December 17th, 2017, as I sat in church during a Christmas concert, it came to me. I looked down at the program, saw the song listed in the repertoire of the guest Irish tenor, and quickly searched my purse for a tissue. When he opened his mouth and sang, it all became so clear. It had been a love song between my parents. Listen to the opening lines. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. It's you must go and I must bide. My father had been a romantic. After he retired, my mother insisted on continuing to drive a school bus part-time for her pin money, as she called it. Before she left home in the morning, Dad often fixed her breakfast and left a note next to her plate that said, "Breakfast with love." When I cleaned out her house after she died, I found one of those notes. After my father died, Mom lived decades without him. Danny boy was my father's call to her beyond the grave. Perhaps he'd had a premonition he was going to leave the earth well before she did. But the love song also mirrored Mom's continued devotion to him. It's you must go and I must bide sounded like Mom singing to Dad. A few lines later, I imagined them joined in chorus. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. It's I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. In sunshine or in shadow echoed the wedding vows they'd taken to remain committed for better or worse. Mom had been even truer than that, going beyond the pledge until death do us part, to maintain her devotion beyond his grave. To my mind, Dad picked up the lyrics in verse 2, calling to my mom as she laid flowers on his tombstone. But when ye come, and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I may well be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say, and Ave there for me. And then he heard her footsteps above him, and saw her kneel to say she loved him. And I shall hear the soft you tread above me, and all my grave will warmer, sweeter be, for you will bend and tell me that you love me. At the end, he whispered back, I shall sleep in peace until you come to me. 29 years later, she had. Do you think he knew I loved him and how much? Mom routinely asked when we talked. Her voice wobbled on the verge of what often turned into a full-blown cry. Ever since he died, she'd been burdened by having ever raised her voice to him, heartbroken over the possibility Dad hadn't known the full measure of her love. He knew, I'd tell her, certain that he did in fact know. The words of his favorite song proved it. He'd wait for her until it was time for their reunion in heaven, as true to her in death as he'd also been in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, yeah. Okay. I got knocked off again. We had a power failure. I'm on my iPhone. I'm not using the computer anymore, and I'm hotspotting as opposed to trying to go to the internet that keeps getting knocked off here. So we'll try it this way. Our next reader is Matthew Turatt, who is an engineer with Gulfstream, who's returning to writing after many years of focusing on family and career. He was born in Montreal. He lived in San Diego for 19 years before moving to Savannah in 2006. He's married to his beautiful wife, Deborah, has one fantastic child and 4 crazy dogs. He's grateful to have found a community of friends and fellow writers in the Peacock Writers Group. And he's going to be reading today from a story called Circumnavigation. Matthew?
Yes, thank you very much, Jeff. This is a story about a man looking back on his search for clues about his father's demise in the Chinese Revolution of 2011. And it's part of a larger story where family secrets about that and other things are revealed to him by his aunt, who has looked after him since he was a child and who is now starting to wander in and out of the past. So the story again is called Circumnavigation. Jules slid the desk lamp over on the library table. In the dusking room, the cone of yellow light spread across Asia like a sunrise. He circled the words Chinese Empire with the stem of his pipe. That's where he was. Bending over the colorful map, he searched the smaller print with a magnifying glass and pointed at last to a spot on the Chinese coast. That's where his last letter came from, he said. He had business dealings there. When my uncle lifted his finger, I studied the spot and found Shanghai. What kind of business, I asked. Buying flowers, he said, poppies. Like in Flanders Fields? Something like that, he replied, looking down and stuffing tobacco into his pipe. Dealing in flowers didn't seem like such dangerous work. So how'd he die? Lost in the war, my boy, he puffed on the pipe, swallowed up by the whole mess. As spice-scented smoke filled the room, he painted a big landscape for me in broad strokes about the history and the politics and the bloody battles between the Qing dynasty and the Xinhai revolutionaries. But he placed my father into the landscape with only a few coarse brushstrokes. The image was vague and unfinished. We don't know what happened to him, he said, but you're smart and inquisitive. Maybe you'll find out one day. My father vanished in China when I was 3 years old, and my mother died of heart failure just 1 year later. So I was raised by my Aunt Toddy and Uncle Jules and a big Queen Anne in Sidley. I always accepted my mother's death as tragic, but unmysterious fact. I never questioned it. On the other hand, my father's fate was intriguing. I had no memories of my father and knew only slightly more from the things Jules told me. The way Jules put it, he made some money from aces and kings, but then he traded his hand for deuces and threes. From what I learned, always losing in snap to my friend Peter Lawlett, I figured that my father's luck had changed. But Jules also said that he talked as fast as he drove his red roadster and wore white suits in winter with wide-brimmed fedoras. I took that to mean he was spirited and sporty and stylish. I pieced together my own image of him, a collage that I made from colorful scraps of map, red roadster, and white suits. I filled all the gaps myself. I imagined all the places my father had been, and I returned to the map often. I planned my own travels in a notebook and laid out routes on the map in red yarn that crisscrossed the world in every direction of the compass. Preparing for my adventures, I bushwhacked through the Amazon and the tangled thicket at the edge of Bellside Park, and I climbed Everest on the crag. When Peter and I traded marbles in the lane, I pretended to be a merchant in the bazaar of Marrakesh. I knew more about the value of marbles than he did, and what fortune and pride I lost in Snap was won back trading Aggies for cat's eyes. When I was 12, I joined the Magellan Society at Westbrook School for Boys. It was an adventure club dedicated to exploring the school's forbidden places. We descended to the steam tunnels and climbed the clock tower, leaving small flags behind to claim the depths and the summit for ourselves. The flags were my idea. They were emblazoned with letters spelling out the name of our club, cleverly circumnavigating the globe. The Magellanites also explored the mysteries of the small black satchel bag that stern and solitary Mr. Fitzroy always carried around on campus. We saw it beside him in the library and the dining hall, and when he sat under the willows. He brought it into every class, but he never opened it to retrieve books or papers. Only once, he left it unattended in our presence, when he was summoned from his office by the headmaster during a lecture to Trevor Hislop and me on the importance of grammar. Without proper punctuation, he said, words wander aimlessly on the page. That was fine with me. He told me to wait until he returned so he could expound on the power of the semicolon. I opened his mysterious bag after he left the room. In it, I found only fountain pens and a hard-bound manuscript of love poems in the same flowing handwriting we'd seen on the blackboard. Astonishingly, some were written in free verse. It was a work in progress, with just one verse written for the last poem. Trevor held up a flag. "What do you think?" he asked. I shook my head. We had just plumbed secret depths, but I didn't think we should stake a claim to them. "It's a discovery, isn't it?" Trevor laughed. He slipped the flag between the pages of the manuscript like a bookmark and put the book back into the satchel. Mr. Fitzroy never mentioned it, but he didn't call on us again during class that semester, and no one ever saw the bag again. After the gates of Westbrook swung open for me, I was drawn to Stodgemore College by the promise of freedom in the college motto, Scienti Libertas. I hoped that studies in geography and political science would be my passport. In the end, I was freed not by my diploma, but by a family connection that landed me a junior clerk position in the Foreign Service. I packed my leather suitcase that I found in my aunt's attic, placing a blank journal in a satin pouch, along with a brass compass that my uncle gave me. With that, I started along the red yarn roads that I had mapped out years before. While I was stationed at the embassy in Peking, I tried to track down clues about my father's time in China and how he died there. I explained the case to Mr. Wemberley, the records administrator at the embassy. The bureaucrat always wore the same style dark gray suit, white shirt, and black cap-toe Oxfords, but each day of the week he wore a different natty necktie and vibrant colors and jazzy patterns. He looked at me over his spectacles, surrounded at his desk by carousels of rubber stamps and stacks of folders rising out of wire baskets. File cabinet 6, third drawer down, missing citizens file, Shanghai, 1911. He returned to stamping forms. "If he isn't in the file, try Foreign Affairs," he said without looking up. "But that was a long time ago, Mr. Finch, and the Chinese are bad record keepers." As Wemberley suspected, the Foreign Affairs Department of the Kuomintang government kept no records of foreign nationals who had gone missing during the revolution. A Chinese bureaucrat, a hunched man named Mr. Zhu, who was surrounded by his own impressive collection of rubber stamps, directed me to the Red Cross in Shanghai. But on a trip there the next month, I found the names on their list jumped from Fennerman to Finnegan, with nothing in between. That's it.
Okay, it looks like, did Jeff fall off again?
Oh.
Okay. Our next person, I'm going to share my screen because Kimberly Banks was unable to actually physically be here. But she recorded it so that we could all see it. So hold on just a moment. Bear with me while I. Okay.
The stifling heat inside the Shoreline Baptist Church stuck to Elijah's skin, and the bottle of whiskey from the night before churned in his stomach. Acid rose in the back of his throat, and he clenched his jaw. The massive staples that held the lining of the casket in place dug into Elijah's hands, drawing blood, before he realized how tight he was gripping the edge. Owen's wax-like face etched itself into Elijah's mind. His charcoal gray suit, the one Owen wore to homecoming year, was wrinkled. Pale blue bruising left behind on his neck by the ligature was peeking through the makeup the mortician used. The woodsy scent of Owen's aftershave wafted into Elijah's nose, and he gripped the edge tighter. "Elijah, honey, you have to keep moving," Owen's mom, Shelley, whispered in his ear, interrupting his grief-riddled thoughts. Shelley's hair was tied back in a modest bun, and golden flyaways framed her gracefully aging face. Shelley slid a tender hand over his and gave him a half-hearted smile. It was the smile she gave when things were bad. It let him know, in some sort of secret code, that she knew everything was crap. but he had to keep pushing through. Elijah cast a glare behind him at the line of mourners who were sobbing and sniffling, waiting to get their last peek at Owen. The judgment of his battered face was transparent as they glared at him, whispering gossip among themselves. He deserved this time with Owen, as long as he wanted. This was goodbye. Elijah's throat bobbed, and he struggled against the tears he wanted to let spill out onto his friend's body. Something wasn't right. The whole scenario wasn't right. Owen had no reason to kill himself. Just one more minute, then I'll go. Elijah squinted at them, speaking louder so they could hear. They can wait, he said matter-of-factly. Elijah knew the three girls criticizing him. He'd met them once at one of Owen's film school functions. They were acquaintances that wanted to show up only so that they could go back to school and speak out about how Owen's death affected their emotional state, making Owen's death all about them. As Elijah stared at the girls, something brushed his fingertips. He snapped his attention back to the casket. Crazy as it may seem, Elijah could swear Owen touched his hand. Binks, the golden retriever Shelley bought for Elijah and Owen after Elijah's father died, was curled faithfully at the head of his master's coffin. In the last 20 minutes, Binks has raised his head, glanced at Owen's coffin a half dozen times, whimpering in grief. Elijah was lucky to have Shelley in his life. If it wasn't for her, he would have been an orphan after his father's car wreck. Elijah never knew his mother. The only thing he did know was that she abandoned them both after he was born. Being an only child, Owen was the closest thing Elijah had to his sibling. His dear friend that he made forts with as a child, went trick-or-treating with, rode bikes with, grew up with, wasn't a friend at all. He was a brother. Elijah's ears burned and his hands trembled. He was lost in a hurricane of confusion, understanding how someone so kind and amazing could take his own life at the age of 25 was an impossible task. The long-term life-altering implications of the vacant and soulless body before him hadn't fully taken shape into reality. This can't be happening. This is a nightmare, and I'm gonna wake up. A menacing crow screeched behind Elijah as it soared through the church from one of the open windows, separating him from the casket. Half of the mourners scurried, while others attempted to guide out the black little devil. Defiant, it perched itself on a structural beam above the sanctuary and bore its eyes into Elijah. Binks growled with fury at the bird. Barking ferociously, he guarded the front of Owen's casket. The walls of the church closed in on Elijah, and he adjusted the collar of his black t-shirt. His ribs throbbed where he had been beaten the night before. Vertigo rushed over him like a tidal wave, and he clumsily darted for the door. Escaping the heavy atmosphere of the funeral, Elijah stumbled out the front. His legs were heavy as a result of his Justin work boots. His legs were heavy, and as a result, his Justin work boots thumped against the aged wood of the porch. The muggy air of the South Carolina July evening was still and silent. Leaning on the dilapidated railing of the small country church, he watched a breeze roll over the marsh of the coast. Salty sea air gusting into his face, sending his chestnut-colored, shaggy hair into frenzy. The churning in his stomach settled, and he unclenched his jaw. The sun was passing the horizon, and the reflection colored the scattered clouds different blended shades of charcoal and violet. The deep green water of the inlet was still, and cicadas sung. It was serene, but the emotional storm that was raging inside was stark in contrast. Elijah plucked a piece of overgrown wheatgrass next to where he was standing. God damn it, Owen, Elijah gave a sharp sigh. The tension that plagued his shoulders all day melted away as he picked off each bud, flicking them to the ground. Am I late? Camilla's velvet voice jolted him out of his thoughts of Owen. Elijah's lip twitched at her sing-song tone. It was the trained vocals of a woman practicing to become a leading television anchor. He gave an internal sigh, and heat spread through his face. Like always, Elijah shoved himself off the railing and dropped what was left of the grass to the porch. He spun on his heels and narrowed his eyes at her. You haven't been on time for anything in your life, except shopping. Please. She rolled her cinnamon-colored eyes in annoyance. Don't act like people want me here. I just came to say goodbye to Owen. Camilla reached down and plucked a blade of dead grass from her black stiletto in annoyance and flicked it to the ground. The guy did everything for you, and you couldn't even show up to his funeral on time. Elijah's hands were shaking. It took every ounce of strength he had to maintain control. Camilla was beautiful, show-stopping beautiful, but there was a certain amount of high maintenance that went with her beauty. She slipped a Kleenex from her cheetah print leather clutch and dabbed the sweat from her flawless bronze skin. If you didn't know Camilla, you might think she was elegant until she opened her mouth. She never had anything to say that wasn't loaded with emotional daggers meant to hurt everyone she knew. Unimpressed, she scanned Elijah up and down. I see you dressed down, per usual. Camilla flipped her sleek, ebony hair and flashed an arrogant smile with her full cherry-colored lips. Elijah expected that reaction from her. He was convinced her heart was made of stone. We're at the funeral of your ex, and you're worried about what I'm wearing? Elijah clenched his fists and reminded himself that it was against his morals to punch a woman. Nice shiner. You get that into a fight? Nice shiner. You get into a fight again at the Thirsty Parrot? You're so predictable. Elijah's left eye socket throbbed at the memory, and the scab on his bottom lip pinched. He pointed a furious finger at Camilla. That's none of your damn business. She chuckled, enjoying that it was so easy to piss him off. Relax. Jess told me you were there, and you got into a fight. Why don't you do everyone a favor, save the drama, and get the hell out of here? Elijah, honey, are you all right? You're shouting. Shelley eased out the front door. Concern clouded her exhausted eyes. Elijah noted the horrified expression on Shelley's face when she saw Camilla. It lasted for a fraction of a second. It would have been unrecognizable by anyone who didn't know her. In an instant, she smiled with grace and then gave trained Southern hospitality extend of her hand, welcoming Camilla up the stairs. Okay, so thank you for listening. Sorry about my stuttering and verbiage flow constipation. I don't even know if that's a phrase, but thank you guys so much for listening to my pages. Sorry I couldn't be here in person, but I had to adult today. So thank you again. Have a good day.
Well, thank you. Was Kimberly introduced?
No, I didn't have any information. So if you want to do the honors now, please do. All
right, I will introduce her afterwards. So Kimberly Banks is an award-winning author for her manuscript Antasia, which won first in category for supernatural, paranormal, mystery, and adventure in 2008 Chatelier International Book Awards. She has a bachelor's in communication and filmmaking and an associate's degree in criminal investigation. She has worked as a private investigator for the state of Colorado and currently lives in Savannah with her husband and 4 boys. And she was reading from her new novel, Seven Sisters Road. All right, next we have, and I am sorry, I don't know how this happened, but I got even knocked off from the connection that I have through my cell phone. So, but it seems like the storm has passed on by now. But Susan Jean McCarthy is going to be our next reader. In 2008, Susan Jean flew to Africa with a one-way ticket. She journeyed through 14 countries in 21 months on local transportation. And these are amazing stories that she tells. The journey had many pieces, and today she will read to us a piece of this journey. Susan?
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, this is a piece of the piece, and I started sending these out a couple months ago, and I was lucky enough to get one of them published in the Persimmon Tree magazine. It's for people over 60, but it was very cool, and I was very excited. And this isn't this one. This is another one. Some of you have heard this. Some of you haven't. It's called The Bus Ride. September 2009, The Bus Ride. Kigoma is tucked in the northern corner of vast, empty western Tanzania. I got here yesterday. This small town is a northern port on great African Lake Tanganyika for the regal British ferry MV Liemba. Tomorrow, I'll ferry 300 miles to Zambia at the southern tip of the lake. At port office, a Tanzanian official in tailored khaki speaks perfect British English. Unfortunately, madame, the ferry is unexpectedly dry docked for repair in Zambia. Broad smile. When does it return to Kigoma? He looks sad. No one knows. Taps the ballpoint on highly varnished desk. There's one other way to go south on the lake. He escorts me down the shore to a fly-filled stretch deep in mud. Swaying hollow wooden skiffs have no lights or cover. Barefoot locals spatter through mud, shouting Swahili. The official explains. They buy and sell tickets for the night journey. Overload these skiffs. Go south every night and stop at each village. The thought of being stacked onto a hard-boiled skiff, sliding through midnight black, bottomless water, gives me the willies. Halfway back to port office is an empty pebble beach. I thank the gracious official for his time and stay on the beach. A swimsuit is under my caftan today. I swim into the green shimmer of Tanganyika, longest lake in the world, second deepest, estimated 9 to 12 million years old. Water soft and light as spider silk. Drawing on flat stones, I think on how to get south to Zambia. No planes fly south. Not that I would take a plane. I relish seeing magical surprises of unknown land and people, hard to do from the air. A second reason is the laughing young ginger-haired lady I met yesterday. We had tea. She held aloft a 10-inch Bowie knife. I have passed through 4 airport security areas with this knife, she told me. Trains don't travel south through remote western Tanzania. Buses probably do. They go everywhere in Africa. I roll on my back, prop on elbows. Breathe in Tanganyika. It's late afternoon. My mind luxuriously rolls back 9 to 12 million years. Ancient sunshine runs yellow sheets across the lake. It smells like butter. At my hotel, cheap white box on a treeless hill, I ask about the bus. The bus goes tomorrow for sure. No one knows exactly what time it leaves. Everyone agrees it will be morning, early morning. I scurry in what the hotel tells me is a direction to the bus. On silent British paved streets, I pass squared brick buildings, clipped green lawns, carefully pruned bushes. Paved streets narrow, turn to dirt. Squared brick is replaced by wooden shacks. A few men loll on a shabby porch. I approach, polite, enunciated English. Bus? South? A mile-high, ebony man with arms to his knees looks me over. Mature white woman in orange and brown caftan rolling a battered black canvas suitcase. Dyed red hair straggles from yellow head wrap. He grins, a gap between strong white front teeth. I follow his loping grace down pinched, snaky streets. He stops in front of a row of bare board stalls, gestures, nods, and is gone. The stalls look empty. I yell at them. Bus south? A dark-haired bobs. Where you go? South, Zambia? A dot of a man. His bandy body squats on the dirt floor of the stall, studies scraps of scribbles tacked on a hand-drawn map, points sooty finger. First to Tabora. He shows me the map. Broad smile. Isn't Tabora in the opposite direction? He laughs. No hurry. Points again. Tabora south to Bea. Only way. Many buses from Bea to Zambia. The bus is short, round, yellow with a black stripe. Inside is clean, gray, and empty. Halfway down the aisle, I take a seat on cracked vinyl, hard cracked vinyl. Sun eclipses early morning freshness. Heat climbs into the bus. Riders board now and then, barefoot old men, pants tied with rope. High-cheeked women in splashy blues, reds, oranges, intricate head wraps. Babes backslung in colored cotton quiz me with button eyes. Bare-shouldered, polished of children. Men in tees, vibrant capes, crisp white shirts. The aisle crowds. Every seat is taken except one, next to me, the only white person on the bus. Good morning, young man in white shirt. Everyone but me is too shy to sit with you. My name is Iman. I'm a student at the University of Dodoma. I see his pride. He smiles all over himself. Buses here do not leave until every seat and standing space is taken. Iman sits down. Immediately, the bus rumbles off.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome, Jeffrey.
All right. Our next reader is M.J. Roberts, who is the author of 19 romance novels, including the critically acclaimed Rock Hard series, which is known for witty dialogue, exciting plot twists, and steamy scenes that sizzle. Roberts creates characters who will feel like your most cherished friends and has won multiple literary awards, including first place in the prestigious Summer Loving Romance Literary Contest in 2015 for Risk Your Heart. She's a self-proclaimed nap expert with a craving for hot musicians and cool superheroes, and she is married to a professional drummer, aka the rock and roll god. So, MJ Roberts, you ready?
Hi, everybody. My real name is Dawn Cordray, and I write romance novels under the name M.J. Roberts. For those of you who were at the actual in-person reading last year, I read from the first book in my Rock Hard series, Rock Hard Book 1. Today I'm going to read from Rock Harder Book 2 in the Rock Hard series. It's quite an in-depth series about rock and roll musicians on tour. And now we're on book 2, where Jace, the bassist, is beginning to get together with Kate, who is a PR person, and she's really trying to make it as a writer. She has this possibility to do a PR job, and she's going around with the band. So they have a tremendous amount of conflicts that are keeping them apart. She has secrets and problems and past things. And so the scene I'm going to read for you is a little further on in the book. And so Jace really feels like this is the person of his dreams, and they have been meant to be together, and it's all fated. He originally, comes by her when her car is broken down, and she fixes it before he can help. And then she ends up getting a small sort of walk-on role in their music video, and he doesn't really get a chance to hit on her then. And then it turns out that she gets this job doing PR for the band, and there's all these reasons that her company has and her family has why she can't get together with a band member. And he's finally able to get her over some of that, and then realizes she still has secrets and things. And they finally get to a point where they've gotten so far, and he just gives up, and he really wants to confront her, But instead of confronting her on her issues, what comes out is sort of his past issues. So that's where we are. And I'm just going to read you a page or two of it. This is from Jace's point of view. Okay. I wake up before sunrise and I can't get back to sleep. It's like Riley all over again. I feel like I'm losing you, I whisper. Kate turns over and looks at me. Who's Riley? She asks. Oh, shit. I suppose I need to tell her sometime. I sit up. I should start from the beginning. From the time I was 5, Ryder, his twin, and I were like the 3 musketeers. Kate faces me. Ryder has a twin? I nod, even though had a twin is a better description. She was a little bit of a tomboy when she was younger, and we used to hang all the time. I didn't want to tell the long version of the story, how when we were 15, everything changed, how we felt crazy in love but kept it secret. We, and then she, and I choke up and look away. I need a minute, I say, and I get up and go to the bathroom. After a while, I come out. Tell me about Riley, Kate says. We were in love, I say. One day, she had a cold and we went to a gig without her. And we came home and she'd been raped and stabbed to death. And Ryder lost his twin sister and I lost the love of my life. Kate gasps and slaps her hand over her mouth. Yeah, Ryder was suicidal. He couldn't stay in that house. I cashed in my college fund and bought a van and we went on the road. And we've been on the road ever since. I pause and look at her. He needed me to take care of him, to look out for him. I don't tell her about his addictions, how I had to watch his back. That's not my story to tell. So truthfully, I didn't get to deal with my own shit around it. I pause, roll my lips into a thin line. You want to know how I deal? Part of me pretends she's really not dead. Every night, I hug my body pillow and I pretend it's her. That's how I've gotten by. I watch Kate, the look of horror in her eyes, but I plunge ahead. Then you came along. You look identical to what she would look like now, except you're blonde. Now so many expressions of surprise, shock, hurt, and disgust cross her face. I can barely keep up. I want to stop talking, but I can't stop myself. She jumps off the bed and looks for her clothes, but I stand in front of her. That's why I had to dye my hair brown for that video shoot, she says, finally putting it together. That's why I had wings. I was supposed to be an angel. What did you think you were, angel? A fairy or something? I snort. In a cemetery? When I came out of the trailer, I was in this beautiful, enchanted-looking section of woods. Yeah? And when you had to get up from the grave, I asked, getting her face. And when I was supposed to hand you over to Ryder? I didn't know, she whisper yells. You fuck with my head, I whisper yell back. First, you're there by your muscle car looking like sex on a stick. Then the video, then the PR thing, then the I can't be with you, then the I love you, but it doesn't matter. Then the I can't even talk to you about something that's so important, I need help. Thanks a lot. You fucked with my head since the beginning. I know I'm being unfair, but I can't seem to stop myself. Why are you mad at me? She's still whisper yelling, but it seems louder. I didn't do anything. All I ever wanted to do was love you, support you, take care of you, I say. I've waited 17 fucking years for my soulmate to come around. And that's you, Kate. And you just reject me over and over again. I don't, she says, her eyes fill with tears. Baby, I say, I feel like a shit. My eyes fill with tears too. You're the music of my heart. I gather her in my arms. You're my music. I gently bite her neck and let go. You're my sound. You're my rhythm, my beat. I rub the scruff of my barely there beard across my cheek and across hers. You're not just my angel. You're the warmth of my soul. You're my love. You're my whole heart. My voice drops to under. You are my heart. All right, I'll stop there. So I'm actually working on book 7 now of the Rock Hard series. And I also just finished writing a TV pilot for the Rock Hard screenplay. And all of my books are available at mjrobertswriter.com. And I've had a wonderful time writing these. And obviously having a musician for a husband is always helpful working on the rock and roll world. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the end of the readings, isn't it? Do we have
one.
more? We have you. No, we have you,
Jeff
Jeff.
might have one.
Yeah, wait, I'm going to announce him. I'm announcing Jeff now. Okay, are you ready? Our last reader, Jeff Garrison, is known for historical writing on the role of religion in Western mining camps, along with travel pieces, memoir, newspaper columns, and poetry. He is published in several peer-reviewed academic historical journals and the denominational journals Presbyterian Today and Presbyterian Outlook. He writes regularly for The Skinny, a magazine for Skidaway Island. Jeff is a pastor of Skidaway Island Presbyterian Church.
And I occasionally write a sermon. But I am going to read 2 poems. The first one is a longer piece, and the second one's fairly short, that I've recently been working on. And the first one is titled Granddaddy Faircloth, Christmas Day, 1966. It took some persuasion for you to get up and step outside, but my grandmother coaxed, and with the camera you'd given me, I snapped a slightly crooked shot. I'm now 10 years older than you were when I took that photo, a 9-year-old boy on Christmas morning with his new camera, a Kodak Instamatic. Mom said it was probably the last photo taken of you in a dress shirt beside your tall, skinny bride, adorned in a white dress, the 2 of you standing like sentinels by the holly bush just off the front stoop where in summer we grandkids killed flies. That photo has been lost for half a century, but it's still etched in my mind, your grin and crew-cut hair and your arm around your wife, my grandma. I wonder what you were thinking. Did you want to get back inside and take a drag off your lucky strike, or sip dark black coffee from your stained cup, or ponder when we young'uns that rhyme with onions would be quiet? Perhaps, though, more was on your mind as you thought about how in another month you'd be preparing beds in order to set out tobacco seed, but that would be weeks after you took your last breath. There's much about you I'm curious to know, things that have been lost over the years. When you visited us that fall of '66, shortly after we moved to Wilmington, you joked that we now needed a maid since we had a brick house with 2 bathrooms. Later that afternoon, we walked in the woods out back, and you told of hunting among those pines during the war when you were a welder at the shipyard, and how they cut the bottom of your shirt off for missing a deer. Did you ever shoot a deer with that old Savage Stevens? Or did I avenge your bad luck when, as a 17-year-old, I downed a 4-pointer in Holly Shelter Swamp, the only deer I ever had in that double barrel or any barrel sight? And I'd like to have an opportunity to see you once more work in a tobacco field with your mule, hoe handle, pulling the plow, or perched up on top of that orange Alice Chambers tractor pulling a sled of blight leaf up to the barn for curing. But what I would really like to experience is a night with you at the barn, keeping the fires hot by feeding wood into the heaters under a sky filled with stars and lightning bugs and the flickering kerosene lantern that now sits on my mantle. On those evenings, swapping stories with friends, did your mouth water for something to quench the thirst? Something smooth that you had long sworn off, but the desire, I expect, was still there. It must have taken quite a bit of strength to give up the drink and break with some of your brothers, as you strove to live a straight life and earn the respect of your mother-in-law. But I will never know, in this realm at least, any of this, and must be content with my memories of that Christmas in a house that belonged to the women around you, your mother-in-law, your wife, and your daughters. You'd cut a beautiful red cedar that year, decorated it with white lights, red bulbs, an abundance of icicles with presents for your grandkids filling the floor around the base. After our presents were opened, you called us to your bedroom where, with boxes of fruits and nuts, you stuffed a bag for everyone, contents that'll have to last a lifetime. And then a short piece that I wrote in the end of October of this year, which will kind of become evident. It's titled Silent Spring, and I write it with apologies to Rachel Carson. There's no star-spangled banner as Old Glory flies beyond the center field fence, and there's no crowd to sing Take Me Out to the Ballpark in the 7th. There's no rooting for the home team at the time of the year where everyone's hopes are high, and the thud of a fastball in the catcher's mitt isn't heard, nor the shrill of the umpire calling a strike. The cry of the vendors hawking popcorn, peanuts, and cold beer is now a distant memory, along with the crack of a bat, the roar of the crowds, and the roar of the crowds when the ball flies deep as the outfielders run onto the warning track. The smell of spilt beer, mowed grass, and grilled dogs lavished with mustard and kraut is missing, as well as rain delays, 6-4-3 double plays, and Oregon intervals between batters. Sadly, it'll all have to wait until it's safe to resume, but at least early in the morning, I hear birds sing outside my window. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for bringing your original work to and sharing it with not just each other, but with a larger community online, and for kind of, I hate to say this, but being our guinea pigs on on doing virtual events for the book for the Flannery O'Connor Childhood Home, because for the foreseeable future we may have to do things this way until we can gather safely again. But I do encourage you to keep looking on our Facebook page and on the website. We're going to be posting more events as our new board kind of takes over and starts planning events for the fall. We never had any idea when we had to suspend our events in the spring that it would be this long before we get to do one. So we're looking forward to what we can do in the fall, and this has helped us plan for that. So thank you so much, and thank you for your support of the Flannery O'Connor Childhood Home too. And happy writing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
My apologies.
Thank you, Amy.
I did not realize it would be quite this bad up here in the mountains.
Hey, I mean, you didn't get knocked off totally, which is great.
Hey, Jeff, are we going to have a regular meeting on Tuesday?
Actually, I'm going to be right. I was going to email everybody about that. I'm going to be driving back, so I would prefer not, unless somebody else.
Okay, well, maybe you can schedule something else then when you get back.
I mean, I could probably do it the following week, but this week, like I said, I'm going to be driving back home Tuesday evening.
Okay, well, let us know.
Unless the rain is the thing. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody, have a good evening.
Be safe.
Have a good day.
Take care.